The dream of a carefree retirement under the Florida palms feels further away than ever in 2026. And if you have been watching the headlines lately, you would be forgiven for thinking that paradise has officially closed its doors to the middle class. The narrative we hear everywhere, from social media to the evening news, is that the Sunshine State has transformed into a financial minefield where skyrocketing insurance premiums and a silent crisis in homeowners associations are forcing thousands of seniors to pack their bags and head north. For many who spent 40 years saving for this exact moment, it feels like the goalposts were moved just as they reached the end zone. But while the masses are caught in a wave of panic, a smaller, more strategic group of retirees is doing something entirely different. They aren't leaving Florida. They are pivoting. They have realized that the Florida of the glossy brochures might be dead, but a new, more resilient version of the retirement dream is very much alive for those who know how to read the 2026 data. Today, we are not just talking about where to find a nice view, we are talking about building a financial fortress in the few remaining zones where your pension still buys a life of dignity and ease. Let's be honest about the reality on the ground, because sugarcoating the numbers is what gets people into trouble. As we move through January 2026, the cost of living in the traditional coastal hubs of Florida has hit a wall of volatility that no fixed income can withstand. We have seen property insurance rates in certain hurricane-prone counties jump by 300% in just 3 years. And the new mandatory reserve funding laws for condos have triggered special assessments that are essentially evicting people from their own homes. If you are sitting in a high-rise in Miami or a coastal villa in Naples, you are not just paying for the sunshine, you are paying for the systemic risk of an entire state's growing pains. But Florida is massive, and the mistake most people make is treating the entire peninsula as a single market. The Florida exodus you hear about is real, but it is largely happening in the areas where the math no longer makes sense. The smart move in 2026 is not to abandon the state's tax advantages. Remember, Florida still refuses to touch a single cent of your Social Security benefits. The move is to identify the low-friction zones where the government and the climate cannot price you out of your future. To understand where the winning strategy lies, we have to look toward the heart of the state, away from the salt air that corrodes both buildings and bank accounts. In 2026, the interior of Florida has emerged as the ultimate safe haven. Take a place like Inverness in Citrus County. While the coastal elites are worrying about the next storm surge, retirees in Inverness are enjoying a geography that offers natural protection and, more importantly, insurance stability. In these inland pockets, you can still find modern, energy-efficient homes in active adult communities for under $280,000. But the price tag is only half the story. The real Retire Smart win here is the property tax structure combined with the 2026 homestead exemptions. By choosing a primary residence in a county with lower millage rates and locking in your valuation early, you are creating a level of predictability that is priceless in an era of high inflation. You still get the Florida sun, you are still within an hour of world-class healthcare in Tampa, but your monthly carrying cost is less than half of what your peers are paying just 90 miles away on the coast. We are on a mission to help 1,000 retirees find their financial fortress by the end of February. If this data is helping you navigate these changes, hit that subscribe button and join our community of smart retirees who refuse to let the headlines dictate their future. This brings us to a crucial realization for anyone planning their next chapter. Retirement in 2026 is no longer about finding the best place to vacation. It is about finding the best place to live. Vacationing is about the view. Living is about the infrastructure. This is why we are seeing a massive surge of interest in places like Sebring and the surrounding Highlands County. Sebring is what I call a stability hub. It sits on the ridge of the state, meaning it is high and dry and historically overlooked by the developers who built the expensive, fragile suburbs of the South. In 2026, being overlooked is your greatest competitive advantage. The cost of groceries, local services, and even private health care in these regions consistently sits 10 to 15% below the national average. When you factor in the 2.8% cost of living adjustment for Social Security that went into effect this year, that gap becomes a significant raise in your standard of living. In a coastal town, that cost of living adjustment is immediately swallowed by an insurance hike. In Sebring, that extra money actually stays in your pocket, making the difference between worrying about the price of gas and taking that extra trip to see the grandkids. Of course, some of you are thinking that you didn't work for 40 years just to live in total isolation. You want the community, the social life, and the amenities that made Florida famous in the first place. This is where the 2026 satellite strategy comes into play. Instead of trying to buy into the overinflated markets of Orlando or Tampa, the strategic retiree looks 30 minutes outward to places like Zephyr Hills or Ocala. These aren't just quiet cowtowns anymore. They have matured into self-sufficient ecosystems with their own specialized geriatric centers, vast shopping districts, and endless golf courses, all tailored specifically to the 55-plus demographic. Ocala, known as the horse capital, has become a sanctuary for those who want space and luxury without the coastal tax. You can own a beautifully maintained home surrounded by ancient oaks for the price of a cramped townhouse in Fort Lauderdale. Because you are inland, your 2026 insurance quote is likely to be a fraction of the state average. You are leveraging the Florida climate and the tax-free income while insulating yourself from the volatility that is currently breaking the budgets of the old-school retirees. But let us talk about the elephant in the room, the insurance crisis itself. We recently ran a poll on the channel where 40% of you indicated that rising insurance and taxes were your absolute number one financial fear. And I want you to know that the data supports that fear. In 2026, the retiree smart move to beat the insurance trap is not just about location, it is about the asset itself. The smartest money right now is looking for new build communities in high-elevation inland zones. Why? Because these homes are built to the 2025 and 2026 building codes, which are among the strictest in the world. Insurance companies in Florida are desperate for low-risk assets to balance their portfolios, and a new construction home with a modern hip roof and impact-resistant windows in a non-flood zone is exactly what they want. By choosing a home with these gold standard ratings, you can often secure premiums that are 60% lower than a bargain fixer-upper built in the 1980s on the coast. This is a classic example of spending a little more on the mortgage to save a massive amount on the monthly overhead. It is about the total cost of ownership over 20 years, not just the list price today. As the financial landscape continues to shift, staying informed is your best defense. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by hitting the bell icon, and let me know in the comments. Are you making the pivot or staying put? Now, for those of you who still crave the water and refuse to be landlocked, there is a secret third option that almost no one discusses because it does not fit the typical tropical narrative. I call it the Bayside Bargain. While the Atlantic and the Gulf coasts in the South are seeing prices that no longer make sense for a fixed income, there are inland bay communities and lakefront towns in the Florida Panhandle, places near Milton or on the outskirts of Pensacola, where you can still find water access living for under $350,000. These areas offer a different kind of Florida, one with rolling hills, sprawling pine forests, and a pace of life that feels like the 1990s, but with modern 2026 medical facilities nearby. The Panhandle is often ignored by the snowbirds because it gets cooler in the winter, but let us be realistic about what cold means here. A chilly day in Pensacola means 55 or 60 degrees in January. For someone coming from the Midwest or the Northeast, that is still a spectacular spring day. By accepting a slightly more seasonal climate, you are effectively buying your way into a coastal lifestyle at a 70% discount compared to the southern part of the state. It is the ultimate arbitrage move for a retiree who wants the boat in the water without needing a millionaire's budget to keep it there. The most important thing I can tell you today is that the good old days of retirement have not disappeared. They have just moved. They moved away from the places that became too famous, too crowded, and too litigious. They moved into the towns that value stability over speculation. In 2026, the greatest threat to your peace of mind is not your health. It is your location. Where you choose to plant your flag determines your taxes, your safety, and your ability to sleep at night without worrying about the next legislative shift or insurance spike. Florida still offers some of the most robust homestead protections in the country, a legal shield that prevents your home from being taken to satisfy most creditors and keeps your assessed value for tax purposes from jumping more than 3% a year under the Save Our Homes cap. That is a level of financial protection you will not find in Texas or the Carolinas, and it is a legislative secret weapon that makes Florida the ultimate place to build a legacy, provided you choose the right ground to build it on. As we look toward the rest of 2026, the gap between the average retiree and the smart retiree is going to widen dramatically. The average retiree will stay in a high-friction coastal area, complaining about the bills and burning through their savings until their equity is gone. The smart retiree will conduct a total lifestyle audit, realize that their home is a tool for their freedom, and move it to a place where it can perform efficiently. Whether that is the inland sanctuaries of Florida we have discussed today, or perhaps a different state entirely with a better tax profile for your specific income stream, the goal is the same: financial breathing room. You have worked your whole life to reach this stage. You have paid your dues, you have navigated the markets, and you have raised your family. Now it is time to make sure that the final chapter is written on your terms, not the insurance company's terms. I want to hear from you now. If you were to pick one of the strategies we talked about, the inland safe haven, the new build insurance play, or the Bayside bargain, which one fits your vision of a secure 2026? Are you sticking with the Sunshine State and making the pivot, or has the general narrative made you look elsewhere? Drop a comment below. I will be jumping in to answer your specific questions about these regions and the new tax implications. And if you are still weighing your options and want to see how Florida truly stacks up against its biggest rivals, make sure to stay tuned for our next breakdown, where we put Texas and Tennessee head-to-head to see which one truly wears the zero-tax crown this year. Don't let the headlines scare you into paralysis. The opportunities are still here. You just have to know how to find them. Your retirement is too precious to leave to chance, so let us plan the next chapter together. I'll see you in the next video.